Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tackling a famously intimidating concept straight out of Domain D of the test content outline, affirmation of the consequent. Now, I know, just hearing the phrase formal logic can make a lot of us want to close the book and just walk away. But stick with me here. Mastering this isn't just about passing some exam. It's literally the absolute foundation of how we validate our work in applied behavior analysis.
Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever stopped and wondered how we mathematically prove that our interventions are the things actually working? I mean, when a client improves, how do we know for sure it was us? That's the core mystery that single-case experimental design tries to solve. We can't just rely on gut feelings, right? We need concrete, undeniable proof.
Section 1. The Formal Logic Formula. To get that level of proof, we really have to look under the hood at the mathematical engine powering baseline logic. And that brings us to affirmation of the consequent. Now, BCBA candidates often run for the hills when they hear formal logic terms. They sound like they belong in a dusty philosophy textbook, not a clinical manual. But if we strip away the jargon, this is simply an advanced inductive reasoning concept used to mathematically minimize confounding variables. Basically, it's the ultimate tool we use to make sure our experimental validity is rock solid.
Let's move to and see how this builds through three sequential steps of a classic logic formula. Step 1 is our premise, if A, then B. Step 2 is our observation, B is true. Step 3 is our conclusion, therefore A is true. It's a super straightforward chain of reasoning. If the first part happens, the second part follows. We see the second part happen in reality, so boom, we assume the first part must be true.
Section 2. Applying logic to behavior. Abstract math is great for theory, but how does this actually help us when we're sitting in a room working with a client? Well, we just map those abstract variables to real-world single-case design elements. And this brilliantly illustrates how it works. We assign A to represent our independent variable, meaning our intervention is effective. We assign B to represent the target behavior changing. So the logic becomes, if our intervention works, that's A, then the behavior changes, that's B. We observe the behavior changing in the clinic, meaning B is true. Therefore, we conclude our intervention must be working, meaning A is true. It feels like a perfect closed loop, doesn't it?
Section 3. The inductive flaw.
But wait, what else happened? Let's pull the rug out for a second here. I want you to pause and really ask yourself, can we absolutely truly assume A is true just because the behavior changed? Just because B happened, is it guaranteed, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that our specific intervention caused it?
Actually, no. We can so easily fall into a trap known as the inductive flaw. Here's a crazy paradox for you. In pure deductive reasoning, affirming the consequent is literally considered a logical fallacy. You can't just work backwards and assume absolute certainty. The huge flaw here is that a single success absolutely does not equal absolute truth. Why? Because a million other factors could be responsible for the truthfulness of A. Let's face it, life is messy, and our clients definitely don't live in a vacuum.
Think about all the confounding variables constantly swirling around. It could be a subject's history. It could just be natural maturation over time. Maybe there was a sudden change in their medication that nobody told you about. Or, honestly, perhaps the most common one, the client is just getting better sleep at home. Any one of these outside factors could cause the target behavior to change completely independently of your carefully planned intervention. It's kind of wild how easily a beautifully designed experiment can be completely ruined by everyday life.
Section 4. The ABAB solution.
But hey, don't throw your hands up just yet. Behavioral science has a built-in methodological hero to save the day, the ABAB design. Remember how I just said affirming the consequent is a logical fallacy in pure deduction? Well, in our science, we use it as an inductive tool, and we solve that whole fallacy problem through replication. A sound experiment doesn't just rely on one single lucky success. It has to affirm several if A then B possibilities through repeated phase shifts. You introduce the baseline, implement the intervention, withdraw it back to baseline, and then implement it all over again.
So the crucial point is that every single time you replicate that effect in an ABAB design, you systematically, mathematically reduce the likelihood of those outside factors being responsible. Seriously, think about it. What are the odds that a sudden change in the client's sleep perfectly aligned with your intervention phase, then vanished perfectly during your withdrawal phase, and then perfectly aligned again when you brought the intervention back? No way. The math just doesn't support that level of coincidence.
And that leads us to the absolute ultimate benefit of replication. By doing this, you mathematically crush threats to internal validity. I love that phrase. You aren't guessing anymore. You aren't just crossing your fingers and hoping it was your intervention. By affirming the consequent over and over through these repeated phase shifts, you're definitively proving that your independent variable is the true catalyst for the change.
And guys, this is exactly why we study formal logic. Not to check a box on a test, but to ensure our science is undeniable. So, armed with all this, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. How will you affirm the consequent in your next experiment? Take a really hard look at your own single-case designs and ensure you are doing everything possible to mathematically prove your success. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep structuring your learning, and I'll see you next time.